where the source of the exposure was coming from. Could you explain why you didn't do that? It wasn't because of money, because you originally slated to do 50 people and you only did 28. So could you please explain why you didn't do the testing that we requested you do to clearly identify where this is coming from?
Well, you're right. You did mention, y'all did talk to us about looking at the tentatively identified compounds, or TICs, as some people refer to them. And we talked to the lab in Atlanta, the Centers for Disease Control, and because that data is not 100% accurate, they did not want to present us with information that is 100% accurate that we could stand behind. The tentatively identified compounds are tentative. We can't stand behind that data, so we wouldn't know for sure if that data were accurate. Now, regarding the air samples, you had asked us to come out and collect the biological samples, and our goal was to get out here as quickly as possible to find out what exposures might be occurring. To be able to do air samples, it would have been a lot more expensive and a lot longer before we could get out here, because our department does not routinely collect air samples, so we do not have the equipment to do that, and we would have had to contract out with someone else to do that. Well, it would have just been another 6 months or a year before we would probably get out here if we wanted to include the air sample along with biological.
Actually, I thought you volunteered to come out here.
Then you have more information than I have.
I understand. Anyways, let's get to the meeting.
Sign up sheet. Should I go back to the graph before this one? This one.
The smokers are everybody, or just the non-smokers?
Just this one right here. Yeah, kind of glossed over this pretty fast here. A lot of the report was really fast. Okay, detected, and I'm looking at the second one. Okay, 2 lane, and you say for smokers. What about the other levels here? These are significantly above what reference value? The 95%?
Above the reference value is above the 95th percentile in
Okay,
enhanced.
so you're saying that they're in 5% of the country's most contaminated people. That's what you're saying there.
I'm sorry, 5%. 5% of the entire population, not the most contaminated people. Enhanced is represented.
That 5% are the most contaminated people in the country.
Possibly, yes.
Possibly. Do you look at these numbers here? Look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth one down, 10, 2. Okay, what's going on with this? Where's the dots colors?
Are you looking at, okay, so you're looking at the people that were detected. And these are compounds, the 10 and the 8, is that what you're looking at? The number of the people that are detected. Some of these compounds we would expect to find in blood in anybody that we sampled. They're really common. They're components of gasoline. So driving down the highway in your car, filling your car up with gas. Any of these compounds, you would expect to see these detected. If you look at our reference values in Table 1 and Table 1B, you can see that it's not a non-detect that we would expect to see. We expect to see some value.
Above reference value. We're not saying we expect to see some value. We're saying above the 95%.
Yes, and we had one person that had above 95th percentile for toluene, one person that had above 95th percentile for ethylbenzene, one person for O-xylene, 2 people for NP-xylene, and none for styrene.
And that's 5 compounds that are negative.
Well, you're factoring out smokers too.
Correct.
Who's ever called?
I live in a house that's right by the new tower that was set up for the air quality. And they put up the air quality sample machine right by my house, and ours was one of the ones that tested for the most chemical exposure. Now, my husband and I did not participate in this study because we're not home a lot, but I have 2 horses that graze on this land every day. And I wondered if you could test my animals, or are they not special enough for this test? They don't smoke, they don't use cleaners, they don't do none of that. And I would love to have blood drawn out of my horses, and test them, please.
Unfortunately, because we are the public health department, we can only look at the exposures in humans.
not affect my livestock.
I'm
These
not saying that,
exposures.
I'm saying that we can only look at, we don't have any veterinarians on our staff that can help us analyze the data. All we have are, people that can deal with human health.
If I got a veterinarian to do this study for me, would that help out when it mattered?
Yes.
These
absolutely.
animals are giving me smells all the time, especially Sunday night after 10 o'clock, and that plant blows off stuff every Sunday night.
Just so happens
It's
I know
incredible.
that.
Yeah, it's awful. The noise is horrendous. So I'm concerned about my animals, not just my own health. Thank you.
I actually signed up for public comment, so I have a little more than one question. Okay? The odors that you smell are toxins, so that's what they are, but I'll call them odors since you did in your report. And benzene is not the only toxin of concern here, so I'm glad that Mayor Tillman mentioned the tick test that didn't get done. Okay, I'm going to quote from your report, page 6. Odors consistent with natural gas production, as well as noise, were noted in the residential areas near the compressor stations. Page 6. Odors and noise were again noted in the residential areas near the compressor stations, with the odors being more intense when the wind was blowing from the southeast as temperatures warmed during the day. Page 12. Although staff did not measure noise levels or collect ambient air samples, they did note the presence of both odors and noise during our visits to the site. Page 4. We could not identify with any degree of certainty a source for all the exposures. Your team admitted they smelled natural gas production odors, yet you didn't do any air sampling. Wouldn't it have been surprising had you done air sampling and found the chemicals in the blood matched the chemicals in the air? Page 7. To ensure the results of this investigation were representative of residential exposures, staff asked participants to remain in the vicinity of their homes for a minimum of 4 hours prior to the collection of the biological samples. Page 4. VOCs only stay in the body for a short time, parentheses, several hours. Therefore, this measurements only reflect ongoing or recent exposures. Page 12. It only captured information about recent exposures. VOCs have a short half-life in the body, parentheses, hours. Therefore, unless exposures are known to be ongoing, the levels found in the body only represent recent exposures. Table 1A, toluene, 18 detects. Toluene only stays in the body 4 hours. These people were at home. They weren't gassing up their cars. They weren't driving around. They weren't working at their occupations. You made them stay home for 4 hours before the testing to limit outside exposure and assure home exposure. But then on page 4, you blamed the exposure on, quote, consumer or occupational/hobby related products. It couldn't have anything to do with the odors. Okay, here is the data without the spin. Half the people who were tested and had chemicals in their blood, half of the people were over the levels of the general population for the U.S. The chemicals in the blood, urine, and tap water are the same chemicals found in exceedances in the air studies over and over again. 15 chemicals were over the limit for the whole United States. You blamed the chemicals in the blood on smoking, yet 10 of those 15